Good evening, guys. Friday night in the Pink Attic. You know, the usual. This is a response video to Richard McCooks' excellent video that he posted earlier today, which was he showed his top 10 favorite double albums of his, and he showed some real classics from the 70s, and a couple from the 60s as well, that are obviously very, very well known. I saw quite a fair few of those titles that I've got in my collection. So obviously I won't be showing those. But I did ask if, because obviously he set the set the rules of the competition. So I asked him if it was okay if I could show live albums as well. And I've also done a little bit of a cheat as well at the end, where I've kind of put a bit of a twist on the double album. The double album thing. So anyway, so without further ado, I'll show my selections. Okay, these aren't in any order of preference or anything. These are just albums that happen to be double albums that I admire and have enjoyed for a long time, and I'd like to share them. So okay, the first one is this one. This is Pentangle's second album, Sweet Child, from 1968. This was recorded. It's an album of two halves, because the first album is a live set that they recorded at the Festival Hall in London in June 1968, and the second record is a studio recordings. But it's all wonderful, fantastic performances. I absolutely love Market's song with Bert and Jackie McShee singing beautiful harmonies. Haitian Fight song, A Woman Like You, solo by Bert, is just sublime. Watch the Stars. The title track, Sweet Child, is beautiful as well. Savoy, wonderful. There's not a bad track on this. And of course, this was released just before they released their third or second pure studio album, Basket of Light, which I think went on to become their most commercially successful album. But fantastic record, and love that. Okay, the next one's one I've briefly shown before. This is another one where a lot of column inches have been shared about this. I went through a long period of time where I sort of fell out of love with live albums, particularly after the Live and Dangerous Thin Lizzy, because I always loved Jailbreak, the studio album, and I got Live and Dangerous, and I was sort of astonished as to how well mastered it was, and how it was such a capturing the group live in the way that it sounded. And then I found out afterwards that it had been kind of messed around so much in the studio with all the trickery and all the rest of it, that it kind of took the shine off it, because I thought, well, I'd rather listen to an album that's live, that's recorded not very well, and then perhaps just put out as a bootleg. So at least then you've got kind of an understanding that it's a kind of raw and honest, depiction of a live performance, and you've got some sort of expectation of how the sound quality is going to be. So I don't know about this one. I mean, this is Van Morrison, Too Late to Stop Now. Yeah, this has been cited as one of the greatest live albums ever. and with good reason, because it's just phenomenal. I think it was recorded over 2 nights in the summer of 1973. I think one in America, one in London. But every single track is just wonderful, and the vocal performances is fantastic, and you can tell that he's loving every minute of it, because the call and response on some of the tracks with the audience, and the presence that he has that comes out on the record is just amazing. I knew about this album for years, and I never heard it. I never bothered to kind of go and listen to it. And then I went into my local music shop, and Benny was actually playing it, and I listened to it, and it just immediately, my ears pricked up, and I thought, just the presence on his voice and the vocal performances, and I thought, and I sort of knew what it was from then, because I could tell it was live, and I knew obviously it was Van Morrison. And yeah, when he told me what it was, and I obviously put two and two together, I immediately bought a copy of it. This is actually a reissue, but it just sounds fantastic. You play it and it sounds like the guy is playing the band are playing in your room, in your bedroom. Wonderful album. Okay, the next one's another live album. This is Four-Way Street, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. This was actually, I heard this when I was about 16, and it was I think it was the first job I ever had, which was in a warehouse job after I'd left school. And there was a guy there who was a big Crosby, Birds fan and so on. And he lent me this, and Deja Vu, the compilation album where Joni Mitchell did the cover for. And that was my kind of initiation into Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and that wonderful sort of West Coast sound. This has kind of been, there's been a lot of mixed reviews about this album in various quarters. Not everybody rates this as a great live album, but I really, really like it. I love the version of the Buffalo Springfield On the Way Home that Neil Young does off this. Obviously, this has also the sublime version of Triad that David Crosby sings, which up until a few years ago, when the reissue, I think, of Notorious Bird Brothers came out, and there was a studio demo of the Byrds doing that, which obviously never made it onto the album, because I know there was a lot of acrimony, and he ended up leaving the band, didn't he, old Crosby. But yeah, for me, this is still the definitive recording of that song. It's just incredible, amazing. The extended version of Carry On as well. Yeah, it's kind of, you could argue it's a bit over the top, bit long, but it's such a great jam as well. And I just really love this album. So yeah. Okay, next one. I'm showing this yet again. Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, Genesis. Yeah. For me, one of the greatest concept albums ever. I only heard this for the first time a few years ago. I'd heard a lot of their earlier work before this, and had this on record many years before this, but for some reason I just never got around to buying it. And then when I did listen to it and I actually streamed it online and listened to it all the way through, and it's a trip and a half. So, absolutely, musicianship's amazing. I know that it's cited as very much a Gabriel album because he wrote all the lyrics, and he recorded it separately to the rest of the band. And I think there was a lot of animosity as well towards him, because he was spending a lot of time with his wife, who was ill, understandably. But I think from the Genesis documentaries that are on YouTube that have. There's a series of documentaries that interview Tony Banks, Mike Rutherford, and the rest. Phil Collins and the rest of the band. They seem to have kind of warmed a bit over the years to this. And yeah, it is. It's a fantastic album. I mean, I would say it's arguably my favourite album of theirs. But obviously, you do have to, I think, listen to it to its entirety because of the surreal narrative that runs through it. But yeah, it's a great album anyway. Okay, probably a controversial choice here for. But this is, sorry, I'm just adjusting the camera. This is absolutely my favourite album, certainly from the Buckingham Nicks era. This is Tusk, Fleetwood Mac. Yeah, this is just, I mean, it's very much a kind of Lindsey Buckingham album. His kind of quirkiness with his guitar playing, weird tunings, and that comes through. But I think it's also got arguably Stevie Nicks' best ever performance with the band with Sarah, which is just fucking sublime song. Just beautiful, love it to bits. Over and over. Christy McVie's song is fantastic. The title track, obviously, which I think was used an entire marching band at a Dodgers Stadium, was it? I think it was it was the most expensive album ever produced at the time. It broke all these records, and at the end of the day, a band that's produced an album as big selling as Rumours, where do they go from there? And they did something completely left of field, and fair play to them. And I've got a lot of respect for them for doing that. Why do a carbon copy of the same album? And I guess because it's quirky, different, I like that. I like originality in music, and this certainly has that in spades. So, yeah, fantastic, and definitely my favourite Fleetwood Mac album. Okay. Another one that probably doesn't get shown very much, but one that I really enjoy, a sort of later 70s album by Joni Mitchell. This is Don Juan's Beautiful Daughter. Obviously, this is the much later, less folky Joni Mitchell with Jacob Astorius with a bass. Wonderful, much longer songs, much more jazzy, drawn out. But yeah, I mean, I love Joni Mitchell. My brother can't stand her, and we always argue over her. But I love all the strange tunings she does with the guitar, and just the atmospheres that she gets with her music. And this is a bit of a weird one, but again, that's why I like it. I mean, I love a lot of her. I've got all her earlier albums as well, but this is one that you can really kind of logic out to, because it's just kind of again, it's one of those albums with longer tracks. It takes you out on a bit of a trip, and yeah, fabulous. So yeah. Okay, a popular one here, I'm sure, but yeah, this was actually the first album of theirs that I ever got on vinyl. This is, of course, Physical Graffiti, Led Zeppelin. Yeah, there's not an awful lot that you can say about this that hasn't been said about it. Just incredible double album. It's sort of an album. It's quite sprawling and a bit of sort of all over the place. You've got obviously tracks that were recorded, from 1972, I think. Loads of different locations. I think Stargroves, wasn't it? And the Rolling Stones mobile studio, Ronnie Lane's studio, Headley Grange. Sort of all over. But yeah, I mean, you've got obviously the magnificent Cashmere on here with, those kind of orchestrated guitar sounds, and just multi-laid overdub uh, guitars of Jimmy Page's. You got bluesy numbers. Some of the acoustic numbers on this I really like as well. Like the Bronier, the instrumental's really nice. Again, quite sort of Burt Jansch-like, which is probably where I like it. Maybe where Jimmy Page got the was influenced by. But yeah, wonderful stuff from the Zepp. Okay, this is a compilation, so I don't know whether this counts, but fuck it, I don't care. I'm putting it in anyway. This is Jethro Tull's Living in the Past. I would actually go out on a limb and say that this is almost my favorite Jethro Tull album. I really, really like this album. I know it's a compilation. The Dharma with One, the live side, yeah, I can kind of take or leave. That's not particularly great. But for me, the side with like Nursey and the acoustic ones, when Ian Anderson is being sort of very quirky and acoustic at this period, his stuff is almost it's just transcendental almost. He's got this wonderful vibe, and of course I think he's very appreciative of artists like Roy Harper, playing different tunings, with a capo at the neck and stuff, and wonderful. A lot of B-sides as well collected on this, non-album tracks. I know in America, I think albums like Benefit came out with Witch's Promise on and stuff like that, but in the UK here we didn't get that. So obviously to get those non-album singles, you needed to purchase this. This is an original with the book cover and the booklet inside. I actually had 2 or 3 copies of this before I got a really nice one. So, Ben eventually, bless him, came up trumps with this, and it's a wonderful, wonderful original copy. So, very, very happy to have this in my collection. Okay, just a couple more now. This is probably my favourite of the lot. I know I've showed this before, but what the hell, Roy Harper doesn't get shown very often on the VC. Flashes in the Archives of Oblivion. This is the first album that I ever heard by Roy Harper, and it's still my favourite to this day. It's engineered and produced, I think, by John Leckie, who did the Radiohead albums and stuff. But yeah, it is superbly engineered and sounds wonderful. But it's very much a live sounding album. There's all the crowd noise and the call and response. Where he's laughing and joking with, sharing jokes with the crowd, asking for for requests and so on, which is something that he does when you see him live. He's the most down to earth human of guys. You get what you see is what you get. You get Roy Harper, you get his personality that comes through, and his guitar playing is just sublime. He's incredible. Again, with all the weird, strange tunings that he plays, wonderful poetic lyrics. And he talks about the songs as well, so he puts them into context. My favourite on this has got to be Me and My Woman, which I've seen him perform live probably 3 times. But the version on this easily eclipses the original from Stormcock, which I know for maybe some Roy Harper fans and people who love the album Stormcock, don't get me wrong, it's a great album. But the live version without all the orchestration, everything, that's just straight from the heart. And it is one of his favorite songs. He said that on a number of occasions. And, you know, the performance that he puts forward on this is just breathtaking. And it's brought me to tears on several occasions. And there's not many songs that manage to do that. So yeah, again, I've said this before, but I would urge anybody who's not into Roy Harper or not got this album, go out and get yourself a copy. You seriously won't regret it. Wonderful. Okay, the last one is my cheat album, because it's not a double. It's actually a triple album, and I've alluded to this a couple of times in some of my earlier videos, but I'm going to show it now. This is the concept album by Godley and Cream, of course, from 10cc, and this is their album Consequences. Excuse me. This was the album that Godley and Cream effectively left 10cc for in 1976 to produce. To say it was a commercial failure is an understatement. I think it's one of the rare vinyl releases that, to my knowledge, has never been issued on CD, and I know that's to the chagrin of a lot of Godley and Cream and 10cc supporters. Maybe it has been now. I don't know. I've not come across it though. But it's a fantastic album. It's another one that people have disagreement on. Some say that they like the libretto part, which is Peter Cook doing all the characters on it, which I think is very funny. But then I'm a Peter Cook fan. I like his satirical humour. Yeah, it was a showcase for the guitar implement, which is called the Gizmo. That was like a piano type keyboard that would fit over the bridge of the guitar, and it had wheels on it, so you could effectively play with unlimited sustain. The first song that Godley and Cream or Kevin or Lol Cream used it on was on the album Sheet Music, on the track Old Wild Men, which obviously gives it a kind of symphonic sound. It'd probably be something these days, obviously, that would just be very, very easy to create with synthesize, and I guess with sampling only a few years away, and Fairlights and so on after this album came out in 77, meant that it was never going to really take off. But it remains an interesting piece. It's not something that I listen to very often. But yeah, I mean, it's the story of men or man fighting against the elements. Wind, rain, earth, fire, air, and water taking over, and trying to claim back the planet. Which was very prophetic for the time that it was produced in. I mean, in the 70s, they knew about the sort of problems with the ozone layer, and they never took CFCs out of aerosols, did they? Until about 10 years later. Everything late, and particularly, I guess, with the times now that we're living in, with this dreaded virus. This seems an album like this seems painfully poignant. But anyway, so that's my choices. So I'm going to leave it there, guys. Thanks again to Richard for being highly original and coming out with ideas that I wish that they're so simple, but I wish I could bloody come out with, and I never do. So great one there, Richard. Once again, you come up trumps. But yeah. I recommend you check Richard's channel out if you've not seen it. He's excellent. He does fantastic, particularly ratings videos. He shows a lot of records, but he also talks about them and has a lot of knowledge and a personality that comes through to match as well, which is fabulous. So anyway, guys, have a great weekend. Thanks for putting up with me again for nearly half an hour. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe. I know that sounds like a cliche now, sorry, but I mean it. Look after yourselves, love one another, and listen to loads of music, because that's why we're all here for at the end of the day. Take care. Bye-bye.